And we are live. Welcome, mystery and thriller fans. I'm your on-air host and author, Sara DiVello, and I am so excited to welcome back today #1 internationally best-selling author, Ruth Ware, here to give us the inside scoop about her brand new book out tomorrow in the U.S., One Perfect Couple. Ruth, welcome back to Mystery and Thriller Mavens. Tell us about this book.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm so pleased to be here. So how can I summarize this book? My main character, Lila, she's a scientist. She's kind of hit a bit of a rut in her career. She's slightly on the outs with her boyfriend, Nico, who's an aspiring actor. He's also hit a bit of a crunch point. Lila's 32, so she's kind of, she's getting to the point where she thinks she might want to sort of start settling down, thinking about kids, buying a house. Nico's only 28, and as far as he's concerned, he's still hustling. He's still waiting for his big break. The big break comes in the form of an invitation to do this brand new reality TV show, One Perfect Couple. Lila's not completely sure. The snag is, however, that it is a couples TV show, as the title suggests. And she wants to be a good girlfriend. She wants to be supportive. So she says yes. She and Nico jet off to this gorgeous island in the middle of nowhere, white sand, Maldivian villas. Everything goes perfectly until the first night when there's this enormous storm. The boat with all the crew on it is swept away. The contestants wake up the next day to find that, the island's in disarray. The desalination plant has been destroyed. They've got very limited fresh water. And basically, the stakes have suddenly gone from winning this sort of reality TV show to life or death. And it becomes apparent that someone on the island is out to win at all costs. It was huge fun to write.
And it is huge fun to read. And I cannot wait to get the inside scoop on this book and take everybody's questions live, because Ruth, we have a lot to talk about. We got a lot to talk about in this little baby.
I'm so sorry. After silencing my phone, it's now decided to put an alarm on for some reason from yesterday. So I'm just going to turn it off so I don't go nuts sitting here.
Perfect. And I'm going to explain to everybody how this works. So if you've been here before, you know the drill. And if you're new, welcome, friends. Here's the drill. Every Monday, I give you my handpicked featured authors, and you get to ask them anything. This is your chance to ask the incredible #1 internationally best-selling Ruth Ware, the Agatha Christie of our generation, anything you want about One Perfect Couple, about this couple, Lila and Nico, about her writing process, her relationship to creativity, anything that's been going on in your brain. Just get them going on in the questions. And the thing that I'm most excited about is, you guys, we have signed books today. You have until 5 p.m. ET to get your orders in to my partner in crime, Murder by the Book, and Ruth Ware will sign your book, and the good folks at Murder by the Book will ship it to you. So we got Mother's Day coming up. We got Father's Day coming up. Your birthday, your friend's birthday. You got to treat yourself and treat your loved ones. And what makes the best gift of all? A signed, autographed copy of Ruth Ware's One Perfect Couple. So get those orders going. Okay, let's jump into the comments. Sharon is joining us from YouTube saying, hi, Sara and Ruth. So nice to see you. Sharon, welcome. We have Renee joining us from Charlotte, North Carolina. Welcome, Renee. We have Wanda joining us from West Virginia. Hi, Wanda. Welcome to the conversation. We have Randy joining us from YouTube saying, hi, Ruth. Hi, Sara. Hi, Ruth. Thanks for joining us today. Renee is saying this book sounds so incredible, and she wants to know, how did you come up with this idea for this book? And I want to know too, Ruth, are you a reality TV watcher? We need to know everything.
But the funny thing is, I'm really actually not.
You're like Lila, you don't watch.
I want to reassure people that if you love reality TV, this is the book for you. It was huge fun researching it. If you don't love it, it's also probably the book for you, because my main character, Lila, is definitely not a reality TV show fan, and she's very reluctantly dragged on. And I think her feelings about reality TV may appeal to the reality TV skeptics in the readership, let's say. But no, it's funny. My books tend to come to me me either kind of handed to me on a silver platter, or else I have to work really hard to kind of form this sort of amorphous ball of, you know, different inspirations, different kind of plot lines into a plot in my head. And sometimes it's a question of, you know, I'll have half a plot and I'll have to wait months, sometimes years, for the other half of the plot to turn up and make it into a kind of a book shaped thing. But
wow, months
in
or
this case,
years.
yeah, I've got sort of projects that have been kind of bubbling away in the back of my head and haven't found the kind of missing ingredients yet, but they will, and if they don't, that's okay. But this book was definitely one of the kind of silver platter ones. And I was doing an event with another British thriller writer called Gillian McAllister. It was a Reese's Book Club event. Her book, Gillian's book, had been picked as a Reese's Book Club pick, and I was lucky enough to have one of my earlier books selected by her. So they'd asked me to come back and interview Gillian and kind of talk a bit about, you know, shooting the breeze about writing. And I can't even remember how we got onto the topic, but Gillian was talking about reality TV and, you know, how easy it would be for the contestants to murder each other. And she said kind of flippantly, sounds like a Ruth Ware book. And I didn't really think anything of it at the time. I was writing a completely different book at the time. I think I was writing probably 0 Days. But when I finished that book, I sort of sat down and her remark came back to me. And I thought, that actually would be a really, really fun plot for a book. But as previously discussed, I don't watch a whole bunch of reality TV. I watched the first ever Big Brother, which came out in the UK back when I was at university. And like all my friends, I was completely addicted to it. Watched the first couple of seasons. And then I think it was a combination of, you know, watching reality TV can be a real time suck. You know, you have to keep up with all the contestants. There's a lot of episodes, but also I think you know, this is reflected in my books as well. I am fundamentally most interested in ordinary people being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Something extraordinary happens to them. And I think that was what I loved about the earlier Big Brothers, is that they were just really regular, ordinary people who you could imagine meeting in the pub. You know, there were people who had gone on it purely as a kind of social experiment, just for the fun of seeing how this weird idea would pan out. And as the years went on, it became apparent that more and more of the contestants were really going on it basically as a stepping stone to fame. You know, they were aspiring models or YouTubers or influencers or whatever it was. And the reality TV show wasn't really about the show. It was just a stepping stone to, you know, some goal that they had in the distance. And for me, I think that was fundamentally less interesting. But then a couple of years ago in the UK, the game show Traitors was launched. And I know it was a big hit in the US as well. It was huge in the UK. Like, for a long time, it was all my friends could talk about. But our version was fundamentally a bit different to the US one, in that, again, we only had regular, normal people. And I believe the US version is sort of a mix of ordinary people and kind of existing reality TV show stars. But the UK one was exclusively just regular people. And they really were very regular people. You know, they were all different ages, backgrounds. There was retired school teachers and people who've been in the army, and there was an aspiring magician, and, you know, just people you could imagine sitting next to in the pub or meeting on the bus any day of the week. Something about that, and about the kind of the, I guess, crime adjacent format, you know, for anybody who hasn't watched The Traitors, the idea of it is that there's a group of about 20 people. The vast majority of them are what's called faithfuls, but there are 3 traitors. And the job of the faithfuls is to figure out who the traitors are. And the job of the traitors is to try and fool the faithfuls into selecting the wrong people. So it's so much of what I talk about in my books, you know, people lying, people deceiving, people knowing that somebody in their group has an agenda but not able to figure out who it is. And that, I think that, together with Gillian's remark, kind of really just got my mind ticking about the possibilities of reality TV. And actually, the show in my book, One Perfect Couple, is also the show, is very not like The Traitors. It's much more kind of Survivor or Love Island. But I think the element that made it in from Traitors is the fact that, you know, from very early on, that there are people in the group who are purporting to be acting for the benefit of everybody, but they are really out for themselves. And it's my main character's job, Lila, to try and figure out who those people are and who is really telling the truth on the island. So that little nugget did make it in.
I am here for this backstory, Ruth. And Jillian has been on Mystery and Thriller Mavens as well. We absolutely love her. And I am just giddy at the idea that Jillian, a conversation with her at a Reese Witherspoon book event generated your creative juices to write one perfect couple. I mean, this is the coolest thing ever. And it's so interesting what you're saying, because I remember reading this article a couple of years ago about exactly what you just said and what Lila observes in the book. She's there as the girl next door, the regular person. And she's noting that, most of them, like Nico, are there seeking fame, and everybody else is, as you said, an influencer, a YouTuber, an aspiring actor, someone who's trying to get a foothold to the next step in their career. And she's reflecting back, much as you just said, yourself, it was reflecting back to that first season of Big Brother when it was regular people. And this article was talking about how the first season of reality TV, they weren't doing anything interesting. It would be like, here's a guy eating his dinner, and now it's like, so-and-so slept with someone else's sister, and now the sister is pregnant with her brother's baby. And it's like, what? It's gotten so outrageous. But back then it would be like, here's a person taking a nap. Here's a person eating spaghetti. And so when Lila, which I now know is Ruth, is reflecting on, on this trend and how outrageous God, I just love this backstory. So thank you.
Yeah, no, that was definitely a little bit of me coming out through. It's funny though, Lila, I would say Lila is one of the characters in the book who is closest to me, but in some ways she's actually much more based on my husband.
Ooh, okay. And I love how, so there's this, very controlling Baz, who's the, creator of this idea, and he keeps calling her the wrong name. She's Leela, she's Lola, and it's so infuriating. And he tells everyone she's a doctor. She's like, I'm a scientist. I have my PhD. I have a doctorate, but I'm not going to fix anybody's broken leg or can perform a tracheotomy. And it's just so funny to see how you're taking a shot, taking the piss, as they say, at reality TV and all these, Hollywood types. It's just another sort of Easter egg there that I love. Oh my gosh, we have so many questions pouring in. We have Mary Jane joining us from Prairie Village, Kansas. She says, I just love Ruth's books. Kim, welcome to the conversation. Jennifer joining us from YouTube. Hi, Sarah and Ruth. She wants to know, what comes to you first, a plot or a character?
Ooh, good question. In this book, I would have to say it was, maybe half and half. I don't know. It was probably the plot, in the I, had this kind of let's write about reality TV show idea. But I had written a lot of books about kind of writers and journalists and sort of people on the artsy side of the spectrum. And my husband is a scientist. Now he's sort of slightly more kind of managerial. But when he started his career, he was very sort of similar career trajectory to Lila, although he didn't work on her area, which is chikungunya, but he's worked on respiratory diseases, influenza, things like that. And he kept saying to me for years, you must write a pandemic novel. There's a big pandemic every 50 years. There was one in 1918. There was one in 1965. We're due a big one. You should write the book. And I kept saying, oh God, no one wants to read a book about a pandemic. That sounds so boring, and I'd have to do loads of research. And then of course COVID came along. Part of me was like, oh, maybe he was right. But the other part of me was like, well, now definitely nobody wants to read a book about a pandemic. So I'm not going to write that pandemic book. But I guess in some ways Lila was not quite an apology to him, but me sort of, scientists are fundamentally really interesting people, and they have a lot of the same qualities as detectives do. And I think, having kind of seen his career developing over the years, seen some of the, the challenges that scientists face, because it is a really difficult way to make a living. Lila talks a bit about this in the book.
Yeah.
But it's all kind of, it's very short-term contracts. It's kind of short-term postdocs. You usually don't have grant money for more than a couple of years.
Mm.
And then depending on your results, if things pan out the way you wanted them to, you can apply for an extension or for more grant money. But if the thing you're working on turns out to be a damp squib, which is often nothing to do with you, it's just purely was the thing you were investigating, a new wonder drug or not, that's what you're trying to find out. If the answer is no, that can suddenly mean that all the funding dries up and you are left, scrabbling around for a new post and trying to pay, a mortgage on a short-term contract. So all of the kind of challenges that Lila faces are things that I had observed him going through early in our relationship. And I guess I just wanted to talk a bit about that in fiction, and also talk about the qualities that make a good scientist, which I think are in some ways very similar to the qualities that make a good detective or a good cop, which was interesting to ponder on. So to answer the question, I guess they kind of both came first, if that isn't a weird sort of thing, that in that I had wanted to write about a scientist for a while, and then this book suddenly seemed like the right one, because I sort of felt like who would be more of a fish out of water on a reality TV show than someone who is very kind of, evidential, very logical, very black and white about stuff. And Lila, poor Lila is definitely a fish out of water.
And someone who cares very deeply about facts and truth and accuracy, whereas Nico and Baz and everybody else are willing to be more malleable with that. And poor Lila is there, trying to, we're not celebrating our 3-year anniversary. This is the 3-year anniversary of when we met, but we've only been, living together for it's so interesting, because my husband also, he was considering becoming a scientist, and now he works in a scientist adjacent position, because it is really hard. And I was happy that you addressed that, as well as the differences of why it's extra hard for women in science. So I just love Lila. I feel like we would be friends, and I cannot wait for everybody to read this book.
Oh, I love Lila too. Thank you. She's great. Lila. She's one of all my main characters are my favorite main characters. Obviously, it's like asking which, your favorite kids are. But I really, really got fond of Lila writing her. And yeah, you're right. No, so much of reality TV is about constructing a narrative and sort of massaging the reality in front of you. It's ironic that it's called reality TV when so much of it isn't. It's all done in the editing room, and it's about kind of creating conflict when there is none, or a story when one doesn't actually exist. And that is just so antithetical to everything that Lila stands for, and she's sort of quietly horrified as she realizes that the truth on this island isn't actually what matters is creating a compelling story for the cameras.
Exactly. And you capture that challenge and the essence of that so well, Ruth. And I'm so excited for everyone to read this. And guess what, you guys, again, we have signed books. I'm so freaking excited because, again, I mean, clearly I love books, and I think books make the best gifts, but I think there's just something so special about a signed book. And Ruth is here from her native England to do her US tour. And it's just such a special opportunity for us here in the US to get signed books. So here is the link, whether you are watching on Facebook or YouTube, here is the link for you to pre-order. The book is not even out yet, you guys. Ruth is coming on to give us the inside scoop and to take our questions live. And also you can, which is just so cool to get to ask her anything, but also you can order signed books. So whether you're watching, we are streaming to 8 different destinations, and whether you are watching on Facebook or YouTube, you can order signed books here. Let me pop that up so we can all see it. So
also, Murder by the Book is a great independent bookshop as well, so it's really nice to support them.
Yes, and a woman-owned independent bookstore, which is just so special. So here is that link to pre-order, whether you're watching on Facebook or YouTube. Get your little fingers clicking so that you can get your mitts on One Perfect Couple and immerse yourself into the world of Lila and Nico and all of these crazy contestants there to in a cutthroat competition to be one perfect couple. Okay, we have so many questions. I'm going to try to get to as many as we can. Okay, so next up, welcome to the conversation. Robin saying she's so glad she caught Ruth. Patty, welcome to the conversation, joining us from the great state of Michigan. Great to have you here, Patty. We have, let me just see, just going through all of this. Elizabeth, welcome to the conversation. She says, hi, Sarah and Ruth. Ruth, are you going to have lunch with Keira Knightley soon?
Oh, so for anybody who hasn't been following me on social media, if you do follow me, then you will have seen me shouting about this at great length. So I apologize for repeating it. But yes, we just had some really exciting news about the adaptation of The Woman in Cabin 10, which had been bought by Netflix. But I've just learned that Keira Knightley has been cast as Lo, which is pretty incredible news. So sadly, Keira and I do not yet have a date in the diary for lunch. I'm sure it'll be forthcoming. Keira, if you're watching this, shoot me a text.
Yay! It is time. I'm sure it will only be a matter of time until you're lunching with your new best friend, Keira.
Okay.
This is so exciting. John,
Hopefully
welcome.
not on a boat, though. So.
What's that, Ruth?
Hopefully not on a boat, or at least not on a sinking cruise ship.
Not on the over easy, that's for sure. John, welcome to the conversation, joining us from Ohio. Renee wants to know, do I watch reality TV? Oh my gosh, I don't watch much. I think for the same reason that Ruth does. It just got it felt too staged. It feels a little too fake for me. And I don't want this ridiculous, drama. It's like I seek calm. So we're trying to stay calm here. Patty wants to know, how do you name your characters? So let's talk about Lila, Dr. Lila, PhD, and Nico.
So I'm quite often asked how I name my characters, and someone the other day said that she felt my characters always had really interesting, unique names, which I loved. The truth is, I mostly don't know. Often a name just comes to me. Lila was always Lila Santiago right from the first moment I put pen to paper. It wasn't something I thought about. I did wonder afterwards. I really love Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and I really love Amy Santiago's character in that show. And I wondered afterwards if the surname had come from her, because Lila does have certain Amy-ish qualities in that she's a real stickler. She's the kind of person that I can imagine having a binder, although she would probably lose it. But I think I really love being a kind of goody two-shoes school SWAT kind of person myself. I love seeing those kind of women represented. Lila is in that mode. So I think maybe there was some kind of Freudian associations going on there. Nico, her boyfriend, although his stage name is Nico Reese, you learn sort of part way into the book that his real name is actually Nicholas Rice. And I guess that was me trying to show the way Nico is sort of not quite pretending to be someone who he's not, because he obviously is that person, but he's putting on a bit of a front. He wants to be more glamorous than his background really suggests. He wants to make something of himself and go to places that he's never had the chance to go, experience things that he's never had the chance to do. Whereas Lila's the exact opposite. She is who she has always been. She's incredibly true to herself. And it's the other people in the narrative, like Baz, as you were saying, Sarah, who constantly gets her name wrong. I think really as a way of I think for him it's a power move, really. He's showing the contestants that actually their real identities don't super matter to him. It's who he considers them to be that is the most important thing. And he hasn't really been bothered to find out or learn who Lila really is. So he's constantly calling her, Lola or Leela or whatever comes into his head. The only character, so I named all of the characters very quickly. They were all pretty much the first name that came to me. The only character whose name changed was Joel, who is the teacher in the book. And he's sort of someone who is in a kind of similar situation to Lila, in that he's been dragged along by his influencer partner. And originally Joel's called Joe, a very small one-letter difference. But my editor one of the feedbacks that I had on the early draft was that she was finding it difficult to tell the difference between Joe and Dan, who's the kind of, he's Santana's boyfriend, and he's kind of, I guess he's sort of, I describe him as looking a bit like a boy band contestant. He's a swimsuit model. He's got like really chiseled pecs. So physically they were very different. Joel is like, he's kind of specky. He's a teacher. But I think I just hadn't done a great job of differentiating them early on. And the fact that they had sort of just very typical English 3-letter names, 1-syllable names wasn't helping. So I tried to think how I could come up with just a shade more geeky, like a little bit longer maybe. And I don't know, Joel just seemed to fit the bill. So changing his name was part of it, and then I went back and did a little bit. The problem is that the scene where everybody is introduced in the book, there was no way of not making that a big introduction where all the characters came together. I just couldn't find a way for Lila to sort of meet half the people at a different time to the others. So there's this big kind of introduction scene where Lila meets all of the other contestants, and it meant necessarily introducing 8 people at the same time. And the issue was I had been thinking about these people for weeks, if not months, and I knew them really well. But that sort of makes it paradoxically harder to describe them because you take so much for granted. It's actually quite difficult in taking a step back to think, what would someone meeting them for the first time notice about this person? So the first draft of that scene that I wrote wasn't quite right. And it was only when I went back and chatted to my editor, and she was like, this, I didn't have a clear impression of who this person was. And I was like, well, of course they're like this. And she was like, yeah, but you didn't actually say that on the page. And that was probably the scene that I worked on the most, to kind of just make, it's quite a large cast of characters, and I just wanted to make them leap off the page as quickly and distinctively as possible from really early on.
Oh, Ruth, thank you for that very thorough answer. And Patty, thanks for the great question that kicked us off. Christine is joining us from Texas. She says, I can't wait. I look forward to all of your books. Renee says she just pre-ordered. She can't wait to read it. Thank you so much, Renee. Christine saying, and the reality stars are making money and getting on other shows and writing books. She's followed Hannah since Specialties. Yeah, exactly. And crazily, my friend Lisa is Hannah's editor. So that's a small world for you.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And one of the books that I used for researching this was written by another Bachelor contestant. I think I'm going to get her name wrong, but I think it's Courtney Robinson, and she wrote a book called I Didn't Come Here to Make Friends, and that was fascinating because it was all about the kind of psychological impact of what it's like to be a reality TV star behind the scenes, and the amount of kind of massaging of the facts and shenanigans that goes. It was really interesting read. Completely, I mean, it's nonfiction, so completely different to my books, but yeah, it was fascinating seeing it from the contestants' point of view.
Ooh, that is interesting. Thank you for letting us know that, Ruth. John's joining us from Northeast Ohio. John, welcome to the conversation. So great to see you. Robin saying, A Turn of the Key is the first book of yours I read, and it remains my favorite. I told everyone, and I am looking forward to this one. Oh, Robin, thanks for joining us. Sarah is joining us from YouTube saying, oh my God, hi, I can't wait to read this. I'm going to be first in line tomorrow when my library opens to see if there are any lucky day of copies. Brianna says she just ordered hers last week and she's so excited. Maybe she'll win a signed one. Absolutely. Kim is wondering, Ruth, what kind of stories do you like to read?
Oh, everything. I read literally everything. I would say, funnily enough, the thing that I find hardest to read now is crime. Partly because I try not to read anything too similar to my own books when I'm starting a new project. Partly because it can be hard, I find, to listen to the voices of the characters if you've got somebody else's kind of voice in your head, and partly because there's always that terror of you're going to stumble over something that they've done similarly or worse, better. That's the absolute nightmare, to read a book that someone has done which is on the same topic that you're writing about, and they've done it so much better, and you just think, well, I might as well give up. So when I'm sort of beginning a first draft, I tend to avoid reading anything too close to my own work. But also I find it really difficult to read crime as a reader these days. And I still really love reading it. A really great twist, a really great whodunit, a really brilliant psychological thriller is just my absolute catnip. But I have to work quite hard to kind of take a step back from me, the writer, thinking, how would I have done this differently? Or I wish I had done that. Or maybe I wouldn't have, expressed it that way or whatever. And I don't find that so much with other genres when I'm reading things like, sci-fi or, romance or fantasy or whatever it is. It's so different that somehow I'm able to switch the writerly side of my brain off a little bit more. But when I'm reading crime, very often the best way I find to kind of to sink myself back into being a reader again is to listen to it on audiobook, because it's such a different experience. So I listen to quite a bit of crime and psychological thrillers on audiobooks, whereas other genres I tend to read a bit more. So it's so to answer your question, I read literally anything and everything.
I do too, Ruth. I read everything. Everything. I read memoirs. I now recently learned that I love fantasy. I mean, I literally read everything. We are all enjoying this conversation. Patty says, oh my God, I loved The Woman in Cabin 10. That was my first Ruth book too, Patty. Jennifer wants to know, how long does it take you to write a book from idea to finished product? Great question.
Great question. From idea is really hard to answer, because sometimes I have ideas like years or months before I'm actually able to start on the book. And the point at which an idea comes into my head can just totally vary. Sometimes I've got to deliver a book in a year. I have no idea what it's going to be about. And I'm sitting there staring at a blank page trying to come up with, an idea from my sort of mental file. Sometimes I've got an idea at the moment that I've been kind of mulling over for probably 2 years now, and I just haven't quite had the sort of the slot to write it in. I definitely will. I want to write this book, but for various reasons it wasn't the right book to write last time. It's not the right book to write next time, but it's going to happen. I'm going to write this book. I promise myself this. So in that sense, when I do finally get to write it, I guess you could say 4 years. But in terms of, I think what Jennifer's sort of really asking, which is about kind of how long does it take to kind of produce a book length thing. In terms of the actual writing, from, I would say, the point where I start to sort of seriously work on a book, like to write it, to research it, to figure out sort of actually how is this book going to be made. It's pretty much a year. So I'm contracted to write a book a year. Not always. I've had 1 or 2 years off, but pretty much. And the way my writing year usually falls out is that I start writing a book kind of late fall, early winter. I write for sort of 6 or 7 months, sometimes 8 months if it's going a bit slowly. And then I deliver it kind of July, August sort of time to my editors. And this means, very luckily for me, I get to spend the next few weeks with my kids, because our school holidays, our kind of long summer holidays in August. So that works out really nicely for me. So my editors then spend 4 or 5 weeks poring over it, writing up editorial notes, putting lots of comments in the margin, things for me to fix. And then sort of early September, when my kids go back to school, I sit down and I start to edit this book. There's usually 3 or 4 months of editing, going back and forth and changing things and polishing and making the book better. That usually wraps up around about kind of November, December, at which point I sit down and the whole process begins again. The book isn't completely finished by November, December. There's usually copy edits, proof edits, all the kind of tiny little sort of tweaks and, making the spelling right, making the punctuation okay. I still can't use a semicolon, all that side of things. But my sort of main focus on this book as my primary project is pretty much a year, from sort of November to November usually.
I did not know that. Thank you for the great question, Jennifer, and thank you for that fabulous answer, Ruth. Now, Ruth, we did have some questions submitted in advance, and we have to get to this one from Donna from Epicurean Reads. She says she knows this is an impossible question, but she's got to know, she's read all of your books. Who is your very favorite character?
Oh, I can't answer. It's like being asked my favorite kid. I can't answer my favorite primary character because those are also kind of close to me. But I guess like there's certain people I would really love to have a pint with. There's certain characters who were really fun to write. Usually, so Nina in my first book, In a Dark, Dark Wood, she was amazingly fun to write because she is the kind of person who says all the sort of mean, bitchy things that you would like to say, but are too polite to say. She's someone who has no filter. If she thinks it, she'll say it. She's really funny. So I would love to have a drink with her as long as she wasn't being mean to me. I love Danny. He's one of the characters in my novel, One by One. He's a really great friend. He's also very funny in a different way from Nina. But yeah, just a really nice bloke. He's really supportive to my main character in that book, Erin. To who my favorite character in? I mean, I love Lila, obviously. We
all love Lila.
If I could have a drink, the thing is, I can't, it's really difficult to say without spoiling it, but there's a group of characters who get to the end. It's one of my books with one of the highest body counts, I think, possibly tied with One by One. And I loved that whole group. I would find it really, really difficult to pick any one of them. They just kind of really bond and look out for each other by the end. It's a small group. I'm not going to say how many people in it, but it is small. If I could have a cocktail with them and give them all a hug, I would feel a bit better about having put them through hell. So maybe
having killed off, a fair number of them too, Ruth. That's why we call you Merciless Ruth. Oh my goodness, we are over time. Time flies when you are having this much fun. You guys, I just want to say again, this is your chance. No matter where you are, Murder by the Book ships worldwide. So no matter where in the world you are, you can get your mitts on a signed copy of this book, One Perfect Couple. You are going to want to order now, and the good folks at Murder by the Book will send it out to you. And so whether you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, here is that link again. I'm going to pop it up so we can all see it, and you can get ordering, because this is just such a special opportunity. And I hope you will join me in ordering. Okay, this next question is from Sharon, and she wants to know about the about the title. So I'm just scrolling back to find it because the comments are coming in so fast I can barely keep up. She says, do you know the title of your books before you start writing them? Do you name them along the way, or do you name them at the completion? Great question, Sharon.
It is a great question. It totally depends. Some of my books, I had the title right at the beginning and it stayed the title all the way through. So In a Dark, Dark Wood was an example of that. The Lying Game. 0 Days was the title from start to finish. So was The It Girl. I'm quite lucky. Not all authors get to hang on to their titles. It's not uncommon for publishers to change titles. I've had a few books where either I delivered it without a title or a title that I wasn't super happy with, or where I delivered it and the publishers were like, we don't think this is going to work for our territory. And that was often a UK-US thing. So The Woman in Cabin 10 was an example of a book where I delivered it and I was like, this title isn't going to work. So the title that I had when I was writing it was The Girl in Cabin 10. And as I was writing it, The Girl on the Train was doing better and better and better. And it had gone from this sort of book that wasn't on my radar at all to being this huge hit and then a film. And I delivered it and I was like, guys, look, this is the title, but clearly this isn't going to work because it's going to sound like I just ripped it off Paula Hawkins. And my editors were like, yeah, you're right. I don't think we can use it. And we brainstormed forever to come up with another title. went through loads of sea metaphors, loads of boat metaphors, loads of, I can't even remember all the hundreds we rejected. And everyone just kept saying it's so annoying because The Girl in Cabin 10 would have been such a good title. And eventually it was my agent, I think, who said, what about The Woman in Cabin 10? And there weren't many. Now it's like there's so many women books out there. It's like The Woman in the Window and The Woman Next Door. But I'd not read any kind of woman books. And we all kept going, the woman in Cabin 10, the woman in Cabin 10. And I was like, yeah, damn it, they are women. They're not girls. Like, Lo is in her 30s. It should be the woman in Cabin 10. And everyone was sort of a bit, okay, let's try it. Let's see if the bookshops like it. We'll go out there and see how everyone reacts. And everyone loved it. And it became this whole, new woman genre. An example of a book where the title changed completely was The Turn of the Key.
Ooh.
That was originally Hush Little Baby, like nursery rhyme.
Ooh.
When I handed it in. And I can't remember. I'm not sure if there was a book that had a similar title, or maybe my American editor didn't think that rhyme was sufficiently well known in the US. But either way, for some reason, everybody agreed it wasn't going to work. And that we went back and forth for ages, and it was a similar thing where I was like, if only Henry James hadn't nicked The Turn of the Screw. And obviously the book is sort of loosely based on, partly based on The Turn of the Screw. But there was so many sort of themes of prisons and doors and locks, and I thought, what about The Turn of the Key? And that was my idea, and everybody liked that. One Perfect Couple was originally The Perfect Couple, but unfortunately it turned out there is a very best-selling book called The Perfect Couple, and everyone kind of was like, it's going to be confusing on Amazon, and I didn't know that, unfortunately, when I started writing, because obviously one of the weird things about publishing timelines is you write all of this stuff so long before the book actually comes out that often things that will be significant when the book is published and not even on your radar when you start writing. And we went back and forth again with sort of various alternative ideas, but I loved the idea of it being like a sort of selection process of whittling down these so-called perfect couples to a final one. And in the end, everyone loved that and was happy that it was sort of sufficiently distinct. So that's how we ended up there. Oh, I can't hear you, Sarah.
My mute went on without my permission. I'm
that's
sorry
so
about
annoying.
That.
We can hear
Oh
you
my
now.
gosh, I was typing. I was typing, and I didn't want my typing to distract anybody, and so that I couldn't get my mute off. Because I wanted to share this link one more time, because you guys, this is just such an incredible opportunity. No matter where in the world you are, and we have people all over the world, this is your chance to get a signed Ruth Ware book, a collector's item, I think. So grab your signed copy here, and the good folks at Murder by the Book will ship that out to you tomorrow. You guys, the book is not even out yet. Ruth Ware is coming on right now to give us the exclusive sneak peek. We're so lucky to get the sneak peek and to be able to ask her questions. So order your signed copy of One Perfect Couple now that you know the story behind the story. And not everybody knows that, but now we know that this was originally called The Perfect Couple. Now we know the story of Nico and Lila, and that Ruth's husband is a scientist. You know all this juicy information because Ruth Ware has come on to give us all that juicy information. And now when you're reading your signed copy, you will have that. And how freaking cool is that? We are over time. Time is flying when you're having fun. And Ruth has got to get ready to get to her event and sign all these copies that we're pre-ordering. So everybody get your do your stretches, Ruth. You got to warm that. You got to warm those. These are your extensor longi muscles. You've got to warm up your extensor longi muscles. Y'all, thank you for joining me on Mystery Monday, where we give you the scoop the day before the book comes out. I hope that your Monday is a little less painful now, and we got your week off to a killer start. Ruth Ware, thank you so much for coming on to give us the scoop one more time. What a thrill to welcome you back. And I can't wait to see you next week at Thriller Fest.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on, Sarah. It's been, as always, a pure delight. And see you next week at Thriller Fest.
Yay! All right, y'all, that's a wrap for us. Yay!